Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is with Cain and Abel. We're going to cover Genesis chapter 4, the first part of it, probably two-thirds of it, and let's get started. Genesis 4:1, it says, "And the man had relations with Eve, his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. And she said, I have obtained a man with the help of Yahweh." Okay, the man we're talking about here is Adam, okay, and his wife Chava, Eve. And the verse begins with the word "and." It's a vav. You've seen this before, and there are four vavs in this verse, four ands. And the word man we know is Adam. And this word, the first word in Genesis 4:1 is Vaha'adam. It's actually three words in English. Va is and, ha is the, and Adam, man. So Vaha'adam, and the man. And Adam we know is man, right? And it's made up of two things. It's made up of Aleph. Aleph is God's letter, and the next two letters, Dalet Mem, spell Dam, which is blood. So to make man, God took blood and God and put them together, boom, and we got life. A nice man there. Okay, and it says, and the man had relations with Chava, his wife. The way it says this in the Bible, it says, and the man knew Chava, his wife. And that word for knowing is da, okay, to know something. And that's how the Bible refers to sexual relationships, okay. He knew her or she knew him, okay. And here it's yada, because there's a yod in front, it's he knew, okay, his wife. And we have used this just in common modern English. They use this word knowledge, can be used for bedroom activities, maybe a little bit archaic, but you've heard of carnal knowledge, right? Carnal knowledge is sexual relations, just an old way of saying it. So yada, he knew his wife. Then there's an Aleph Tav, and Aleph Tav points to the direct object of the verb. The verb is knew. What follows Aleph Tav is what he knew, and Eve follows that. Okay. There's actually three Aleph Tavs in this verse. She conceived and gave birth to Aleph Tav Cain, and she says, I have obtained a man, Aleph Tav, with the help of the Lord. We'll talk about that in a minute. And the wife's name, he said, was Chava, right? Chet Vav Hey. And she conceived and gave birth to Cain, is the way it's pronounced in the Hebrew. It's a kuf, yod, final noon. Cain. And that's interesting because Cain is kind of an offshoot of the word kaniti, which is acquired or obtained, okay? And it kind of makes sense. She obtained a man, and so she named him Cain. He was obtained, he was acquired, okay? So she took that name from what happened there. She did that again too. Remember in chapter 5, whenever Cain, Abel, and Seth was born, because she said, because the Lord has appointed another son, appointed is Seth. And she named that son Seth because he was appointed. Very nice. This word Cain, by the way, is a kuf, yod, final noon. The kuf, its value is 100. And you should know that something, whenever 100 is associated with somebody in the Bible, that kind of points to they could be in contention for the messianic line. And we know that a Messiah is coming due from Genesis 3:15, right? The proto-evangelium. And right now, Cain would be the number one suspect for being the messianic line. And he's got a 100 in his kuf there, which points to this. And some other examples. Look at Genesis 11:10. It says, these are the records of the generations of Shem. Shem being Noah's son. Shem was 100 years old when he fathered Arpachshad, 2 years after the flood. So Shem is definitely in line for the Messiah, and here he was 100 years old, it's mentioned, so there's that 100. We know Genesis 21:5, it says, now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Yitzhak was born to him. Abraham is in line for the Messiah. Genesis 26:12, then Isaac, Yitzhak, sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold, and Yahweh blessed him. So Isaac is in line for the Messiah. Genesis 33:19, and Yaakov, Jacob, bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. So every time you see this 100 associated with somebody, that's going to be pointing out that they're probably in line for Messiah. Now Cain, he's not going to be in line because he ends up doing a dastardly deed here. And if you look at Cain, the letters in Cain's name, it's a kuf, yod, final noon. The kuf, notice the kuf sometimes is thought of as, or its picture points to the back of the head. You know, if you look at the Hebrew alphabet here, look at the letter kuf. It's the only letter that's facing backwards. All the other letters point, Hebrew reads from right to left. All the letters open up and face to the left. But the kuf, it faces backwards. So you're seeing the back of the head. Okay? So you have a back of head, and you have a hand, and you have life. So what can we get out of that? You know, I'm assuming that he smacked his brother in the back of the head and took his life. Did he use a hand or a rock? I don't know. But there's some pictures there that are kind of associating with, maybe he hit his brother on the back of the head, took his life. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's move on. Genesis 4:1, and she said, this is Eve talking, I have obtained a man with the help of the Lord. The word for say is amar. All right? We see it early on, Genesis 1:3. Vayomer Elohim, Yehi Or, Vayi Or, and said God, be light, and light was. So this amar means to say, and she said, I have obtained a man. The word man, we know, is ish. That's one of the words for man in the Bible. Remember, there are 6 different words for man in the Bible because man's number is 6. Right? Adam, Ish, Enosh, Giver, and in the New Testament, Aner and Anthropos. All right? By the way, I'm going to throw this one in for free. That word for fourth one that we read, Giver. You have used this before and probably not realized it. Because when you switch it to English, Giver is man. And if you're a man of God, God is El. So you would have like Giver El. But we change it to a B in English, and it becomes Giberel or Gabriel. That's one of the 3 angels named in the Bible. There was Michael, the archangel, and there's Gabriel, and there's a third angel mentioned in the Bible by name. You know who that would be? Lucifer, the bad one, okay? So Ish they're using here, and Ish we know means man, and you've used that in English also, because if you put it on the end of a word, it means, like Danish is a man of Denmark, Swedish, a man of Sweden, Irish, man of Ireland, etc. Okay, so, and she said, I have obtained a man with the help of the Lord. I have obtained, we already said, is kaniti, right? To obtain. And then there's the word ish, man. All right. And then there's an aleph tav and a yud he vav he. Where is with the help of the Lord? With the help of. I don't see that in this passage. So what it's really saying is, and she said, Kaniti ish et Yahweh. I have obtained a man, Yahweh. There is no with help of in this verse. You know, there it is. And she said, I have obtained a man, Yahweh. She's thinking back to Genesis 3:15, where God says to her, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. She is knowing that God has promised some deliverer person who's going to crush this snake's seed's head, right? And he himself will have his heel bruised. So she just heard that one chapter earlier, and now she's obtained a man, the Lord. She is assuming that this baby that she's had is Yahweh. That's what I think. And that he would be the Messiah, and he would be the one who conquers the snake's seed. Okay? Very interesting. And why that the translators added that phrase, with the help of, because it is just not in there. You can see that. Okay? All right. Verse 2. And again, she gave birth to his brother, Abel. And Abel was a keeper of flocks, but Cain was a cultivator of the ground. Here's the word brother. It's ach. Aleph chet. And if you put a vav in front of it, or at the end of it, it becomes his brother. All right? And it says she gave birth to his brother. And it would be Achev, his brother. And I'm going to call these boys Abel and Cain, because that's just what I grew up saying, and I don't always say Havel and Cain, and you probably don't either. Okay, so here once again is an Aleph Tav in front of his brother. She gave birth to Aleph Tav, whatever follows, his brother, Aleph Tav, Abel. Now, this Abel fella, his spelling is He, Bet, Lamed. All right? Which, by the way, He is 5, Bet is 2, Lamed is 30. Abel's name adds up to 37. There's a big sign. Okay, you've seen all the 37s in my previous videos. This is one of God's big numbers. And so this tells me Abel must have been a good guy. He got 37 for his gematria. Okay? And you know, another thing that I was wondering is, Cain and Abel, are they twins? How much time passed between Cain's birth and Abel's birth? Let's go ahead to Genesis 29. Look in verse 32 starting. It says, so Leah is Jacob's first wife. So Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. And verse 33, then she conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Simeon. Verse 34, she conceived again and bore a son, and therefore his name was called Levi. Verse 35, and she conceived again and bore a son, therefore she called his name Yehuda, Judah. Notice there were 4 conceptions and there are 4 births. Now let's look at Genesis 4, 1 and 2. It says, a man knew Chava, his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. Verse 2, and again she gave birth to his brother Abel. Here I only have 1 conception and I've got 2 births. So this makes me tend to think that these boys were twins. Okay? Cain first, Abel second, and there's just 1 conception that created them both. Because we have a history in the future. We have a history in the future. Does that make sense? Yeah, we have a history in the future of each conception producing its own birth. Okay? So most likely they were twins. It says, again, she gave birth to his brother Abel, and Abel was a keeper of flocks, but Cain was a cultivator of the ground. That word ground is Adamah. Aleph, Dalet, Mem, Hey, and it's from Adamah that we get Adam. Remember, when God formed Adam from the dust of the earth, he formed man, Adam, from the Adamah. Very cool. Verse 3, so it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to Yahweh from the fruit of the ground. The actual reading of that verse is, so it came about in the course of time that Cain brought from the fruit of the ground an offering to Yahweh. Does it matter? Let's try to stick to it as closely as we can. That's the actual, what it says. Okay, and in the course of time, we know the word day is yom, yod, vav, mem. And the course of time, this is days, plural, it becomes yamim. And you put a yod mem on the end and makes it plural, days. That's what he has here in verse 3. Cain brought from the fruit of the ground. The word fruit is peri, pe, resh, yod. This is a word that you'll see a lot in the Bible. And here it says from the fruit of the ground. Remember, if you want to use the word from, that's a prefix mem in front of the word. So here you have mipari, or miperi, I don't know how to pronounce it, but you see the letters, there's a mem in front, that's from the fruit. Okay? Anytime you have a mem in front of a word in the prefix form, it's from. Okay? The word Ephraim is, remember, Joseph had 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim has that pre in the middle of it, pe, resh, yod, fruitful. Okay? Ephratah. This is Micah 5:2 when it's prophesying the Messiah will come from Bethlehem, Ephratah, a fruitful place. All right. And Abel, he also brought an offering from the firstborn of his flock and from their fat portions. And Yahweh had regard for Abel and his offering. That firstborn word is Bekor, Bet, Kaf, Resh, and we've told you this before, but we'll throw it in here real quick. Bet is 2, Kaf is 20, Resh is 200. The word firstborn adds up to 2, 2, 2. And remember, anytime a number repeats itself in the gematria value. There's some hidden meaning in that, and we know about the firstborn from Deuteronomy 21:17, where it says, indeed, he must acknowledge the firstborn, the son of his unloved wife, by giving him a double portion of all that he has. So firstborn gets a double portion, and firstborn adds up to 222, pointing to the doubleness of it. Genesis 4:4, and Abel, he also brought an offering from the firstborn of his flock and from their fat portions, and Yahweh had regard for Abel and his offering. And it actually says, and Yahweh looked favorably on Abel and his offering. It's interesting, Cain, he's bringing fruit and vegetables from the ground, and this was not pleasing to God. Abel brought a lamb sacrifice. I think God is setting up what he prefers, right? He's letting us know. And this makes so much sense. Look at what Cain had to do. Cain had to go out in the field. He had to plow the field. Then he had to plant the seeds. Then he had to water the seeds. Then he had to weed the garden. And then he had to prune and etc., and tend and care for and work. And then he had to go through and harvest everything. And then he presented it. Abel, on the other hand, he sat on the porch, and out in the field were the sheep, and sheep got to know each other. And they had baby sheep, and the baby lamb grew up, and Abel just walked out and got the sheep and sacrificed it and presented it to the Lord. Abel did zero work in his gift. Cain, work. And remember, it is by grace you are saved through faith, not of works. There's a New Testament. Wow, that is a huge verse. Okay? And it's setting that up right here. You can see, God doesn't want you working your way to please him. He wants you to have faith in what he tells you. Okay? And Cain, he's not open to hearing this message. In Genesis 4:5 it says, and he, Yahweh, did not respect Cain and his offering, and Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. You know, God has his way to get to heaven. Okay? It shows up in one verse in the New Testament that just makes it super clear. If you confess with your mouth that Yeshua is the Lord, and God raised him, and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Notice there's no work involved in that verse. It's all faith. So, let me tell you, my friends, you can go to heaven God's way, or feel free to go to hell any way you want. All right. And in verse 5 it says, Cain was very angry and his countenance fell. That word for countenance here is panim, which is the word for face. His face fell, saddened, okay? And if you put his face, it's panav. You put the vav on the end, and it makes it his face. All right? And if you put a kaf on the end, kaf, remember, is the open palm, kaf, and that is your. If you put the yod on the end, it's my. Put a kaf on the end, it's your, paneka, okay? Why has your countenance fallen? You can see paneka in the second line in the Hebrew there. All right? Okay. It's amazing, these two brothers, right? You know, brothers Cain and Abel, they both should be friends. Brothers Cain and Abel, they both should be friends. One man likes to sow and reap, the other likes to chase a sheep, but that's no reason why they can't be friends. But unfortunately, Cain was not friends with his brother. He was jealous of this. Okay? Verse 6, and Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? That word for fall in Hebrew is nafal. You see it, nun, pei, lamed. Where did we get the English word fall? My guess, it comes from Hebrew, nafal. That seems very straightforward to me. And you know what? A lot of our people who consider themselves the educated, intellectual, intelligentsia, oftentimes they're a bunch of morons, and they're also atheists. I heard statistics once that 70% of all college professors are atheists. Now, is that number correct? I don't know. 47.6% of statistics are made up on the spot. So 70% does sound logical. And you know what? They are going to come up with, whatever they're studying. If they're studying the beginning of time, they're not going to believe in creation. They're going to believe in a Big Bang, right? And if they're working in words and etymologies of words, they're going to trace back a word, trace it back, and they'll never go back to the Hebrew. Here's an example. The origin of the word fall. I looked it up on the internet. First recorded before 900 AD from the Middle English fallen. The Old English is phelan, the cognate with German fallen, the Old Norse falla, akin to Lithuanian pulki, to fall. You know, why doesn't it go back to Genesis 4:6? It comes from the word nafal, to fall. That just seems so obvious to me, and not to the people who write our dictionaries. Genesis 4:7. God says, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Woo, this one's packed with a lot. Get ready. If you do well, that word for well is tov. Tov, remember, you've seen that a lot in the first Creator week, the first 7 days. And God saw the light was good, and God saw that it was good, and God saw that it was good. 7 times you heard that in Creator week. And there's that word tov, good, okay? And if you make it yatav, yatav means to be good, okay, the verb. And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door. The word for sin here is chata. It's a chet, tet, aleph, hey. And I want you to point out about this word, chata. It is a noun. Sin is a noun. It's a singular noun, and it's a feminine noun. In Hebrew, like a lot of languages, French, the Romantic languages, Spanish, right, Italian, they have masculine and feminine. Hebrew does the same, and chata is a feminine singular noun. So why is that important, and why am I even bringing that up? Well, look here. It says, if you do not do well, sin, a feminine singular noun, lies at the door, period. Then it says, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. What is it? It sounds like it could be the sin, right? The sin lies at the door, and sin's desire is for you, but you should rule over sin. That's how I interpret that on first reading, and probably you as well. But look at this word for it. That word it is a third person, it's singular, and it's masculine. Now, it cannot represent sin, because sin is chata. It's a feminine noun. And you can't use the masculine it to represent a feminine sin. You understand? So the it on this third line must refer to something else. And what? Well, it turns out it's third person masculine. Third person is going to be he, she, or it. And we know it's not she. It could be it or it could be he. And we don't have a whole lot to go on above this. So what if it was he? He, there's only one he other in the story, and that would be Abel. His desire is for you, but you should rule over him. Abel's desire is for you, but you should rule over Abel. That's what God is telling him here. Okay? It's not the sin that you should rule over, and it's the sin's desire. No, it's his younger brother, Abel. His desire is for you, Cain, and you should rule over him. You understand? It has to be that. There's no other thing it could be. So just know that as you're reading. There you go. That's a cool thing. That deserves a drinkage. Pomegranate today, and water and ice. Verse 8. And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. That first line of this, it says, and Cain talked with, that's the translation. In the Hebrew, there it is again, Amar. And Cain said to Abel his brother. What did he say? It doesn't tell me. It says, and Cain said to Abel his brother, what? And it came to pass when they were in the field. Then it goes off to something else there. It never does say what Cain said. And maybe if you do translate it as, and Cain talked to Abel his brother, and then maybe we don't need to know what he actually said, but he went out to talk to his brother, and then it came to pass when they were in the field, he rose up and killed his brother. But that's an odd thing there. So he kills his brother, Abel. And verse 9, and Yahweh said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? That's kind of interesting. You know, it almost could be, he could have said, because remember, Abel was a shepherd, right? He's the one raising the sheep. Am I the shepherd's shepherd? It doesn't say that, but that would be kind of what it would be. All right, very nice. In the actual translation, if you read the second line, it says, and he said, I do not know, the keeper of my brother am I? Okay, so it's a little bit backwards from the way we say it in English. And here you have that word brother twice in this sentence. There's the ach, okay? You can see it, ach. I have it underlined in the heavy blue. And if you want his, remember we talked about this earlier, if you want his brother, you put a vav on the end. I have his brother, and I have the underline very lightly there. If you want your brother, which here in this, it says, where is Abel your brother? How do you do your? It's the open palm, kaf at the end. So it's achika, your brother. Again, brother has the heavy line, and your has the light line. And then in the second line, the keeper of my brother am I. So how do you say my brother? Well, this is, you put the yod on the end, right? Yod is the closed fist. My. And you see the my, I have underlined very lightly, okay? I use the heavy line for brother, and I use the thin red line there under the yod for my. Okay, and you can see that the line under the yod, it ain't heavy, it's my brother. Okay, verse 10. And he said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." And he said, this is God speaking, "Ma, what have you done?" Remember, ma, that's a word you're going to see a lot. What? Ma! Okay? And what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood. We said earlier that word Adam, is Aleph and Dam, God and blood. Here's the first time in the Bible that you see the word blood. It's in Genesis 4:10, and it's Dalet Mem. And you know the law of first usage, whenever you see a word the first time, it will teach you something about that word. Okay? Remember in Genesis 22:2, God tells Abraham, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah." Here's the first time the word love is used in the Bible. And it's a picture of a father sacrificing his son. Wow! There's a huge picture. Because in our complex unity, Father, Son, Spirit, God, we have the God the Father sacrificing his son for the sins of the world. Very nice. Okay? That law of first usage, we see it in the word kiss, Genesis 27:26. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near now and kiss me, my son." Okay, so kiss is obviously some verb associated with love, and you have a father asking his son to kiss him. Okay, nashak is kiss. That's the first time kiss shows up in the Bible. So if the first time blood shows up is in 4:10 of Genesis, this should tell us a little hints about blood. Well, one thing I learned is that blood cries out. So blood speaks. The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Yeah, I see that. Okay? And we said that Dam is part of Adam, and comes from Adamah, ground. So here we've got, it's all tying together. The Dam is crying out from the Adamah, ground. Interesting. 4:11. So now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. Which has opened its mouth. Mouth is pay. Remember, pay is a letter, right? And it's also a word. It means mouth. And there's two pays. Pay is that one of those letters, the sophit letters, has a final form. And if it's at the end of the word, you use the open mouth, the pay sophit. And if it's at the beginning or in the middle, you use the closed mouth for pay, okay? Verse 12, when you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth. The word earth, which ends this sentence, is aretz. Aleph, resh, tzadi. And it's a tzadi sophit, a final form tzadi. And the first time we see the word aretz is actually in Genesis 1:1, right? Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et ha'aretz, the heavens and the earth, aretz. There's ground again when you till the ground, the Adamah. By the way, that word aretz, let's go back to our atheist etymologists, because they're going to look up the origin of the word earth. Rabbi Google says that the origin is Middle English earthe, from the Old English eortha, I don't know, akin to the Old High German erda, earth, or the Greek era. So here they took it back to the Greek, E-R-A, era, but why don't they take it back to where it really began? The word eretz, if you spell eretz backwards, and let's spell it first, let's just transliterate it into English. Eretz, A-retz. Okay, I have an A, aleph, I have a resh, that's R, and then I have a tsadi, which is like a TZ sound, or a T. We'll just call it a T for right now. And if we remember, Hebrew reads right to left. If we switch it around and read left to right, we're going to get tsadi, resh, aleph, T-R-A, terra. Terra, terra firma. That's Greek, terra, ground, land, earth. You understand? You just take the Hebrew word and write it backwards, and that's where the word earth comes from. It doesn't come from all this crap that they're saying. It might come from Middle English and German and all that, but its original comes from Hebrew backwards. So there. Take that, you atheist etymologist, you. Okay. Genesis 4:12. When you cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a vagrant and a wanderer on the earth. Here, that word vanad is wandering. And the vav is and then nod is wandering. Okay. Let's see. And if you read on down in verse 16, and it says, then Cain went out from the presence of Yahweh and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. And that word Nod is the land of wandering. Okay? And he's a wanderer. Okay? Nod. Very nice. Genesis 4:13. And Cain said to Yahweh, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Word punishment here is avon, or my iniquity is greater than I can bear. Avon. And if you want my iniquity, avoni, right? Put the yod on the end. My. Genesis 4:14. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth, and it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. Okay, you have driven me out this day. Remember the word for day? We talked about it earlier. It's yom. And if you want to say this day, in Hebrew, you put a hey in front of the word. Hayom is today, this day. And that works with other words as well. If you have the word shana, that's year. And if you want to stress it's this year, it's Hashanah. The word for week is Shabua. And this week, Hashabua. Very easy. You can do it with evening. Evening is Erev. Ha-Erev is this evening. Ha-Boker, this morning. Okay? That's a useful tip right there. So you've this day from the face of the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. Okay, look at this word. This is a mouthful. And from your face. Those four words are one word in Hebrew, and it's vami paneka. Well, the vav is and then here's the mem prefix from. So we have and from, and then we have pani. Pani is face, and if you put an open palm cough on the end, it's paneka, vami paneka, and from your face. Very cool. That's a big word, and we've deciphered it. You've deciphered it. How cool is that? Okay, and from your face I shall be hidden. Ooh, look at this word hidden. It's an aleph, a samek, a tav, and a resh, and it's pronounced Esther. Esther. We know about Esther. She is the queen much later on in when the Jews were in Persia, right? They were taken by Babylon, and then from the Babylonians they were conquered by the Persians, and Esther eventually became the queen, married to the king Ahasuerus, or Xerxes. I think most people think that's the same guy. But Esther, and Esther's name means hidden, okay? And it's kind of cool, and I've got an Esther talk. We're ready to film it. It is, it's good. It's going to be a two-parter. It's very long. But in the book of Esther, God is hidden. His name is not mentioned anywhere in there, but he's in there everywhere. You can just see his fingerprints manipulating or doing or something, making things happen. Very nice. So keep that in mind. Esther means hidden. Verse 15, and Yahweh said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And Yahweh set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. Okay? He put a mark on Cain. That word for mark is ot, aleph, vav, tav. An ot is a sign or a mark. We've covered this word a lot. The word ot, aleph, is God's letter. Vav is a nail. Tav is a cross or two crossed sticks, right? So you want a sign? How about God nailed to a cross? There's a sign. And by the way, that word ot is also the Hebrew word for letter. Okay? It's a feminine word. If you want to pluralize it, it becomes otiot. There are 22 otiot in the Hebrew alphabet. Plus there's 5 more otiot final forms, which comes to 27 otiot total. Total otiot. Okay. And we see this word elsewhere in the Bible. Look at Ezekiel 9, verse 4. And Yahweh said to him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within it. Look at the word mark there. It's a tav and a vav. Mark is tav. And what is a mark? What is a tav? It's 2 crossed sticks. So I'm thinking that whenever he put this mark on Cain's head, it involved this. Two crossed lines, a vertical and a horizontal. It's a picture of the cross. That's the protection that Cain received. Okay? Very nice. Well, I think we're going to end right there. God bless. Thank you for watching. To God be the honor. To God be the glory. To God be the praise. Thank you so much for watching. And look forward to this Esther talk, because it's good stuff. And God bless. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Wait! We have a bonus. You know, in the New Testament, it's Hebrews chapter 11. They call this the Hall of Faith. It lists all these characters that are the good faith people, okay? And Abel is in this category, okay? He made the Hall of Faith. We also read about, it talks about Abel as being a prophet. which is kind of odd because I don't know what he prophesied. Yeah, I don't know what he prophesied, but the Bible considers him a prophet. But nevertheless, he is going to be like this first guy who, first good guy who gets it and brings the right offering to the Lord, and he becomes the first martyr. Okay, which has some parallels with Yeshua Jesus. So maybe there are more parallels with Yeshua and Abel. That's what we're going to look at. Okay. The first one I see is that Abel and Yeshua were both second sons. Okay. We saw that she conceived and gave birth to Cain, and she said, "I have obtained a man, the Lord." And again, she gave birth to his brother Abel. So Abel is the second son. And Yeshua they call him the second Adam, right? Look in Luke 3:38. This gives the genealogies, and it goes on: the son of Enosh, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God. So Adam was the first son, and Yeshua is the second son. Okay, Mark 1:1 also, the beginning of the gospel of Yeshua HaMashiach, the Son of God. So they were both sons of God. We see in Genesis 4:2 that Abel was a keeper of flocks, so he was a shepherd. And in John 10:14, Yeshua says, "I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and I am known by my own." So Abel and Yeshua were both shepherds. Abel, he brought an offering in 4:4 of Genesis from the firstborn of his flock and from their fat portions. And Yahweh had regard for Abel and his offering. Okay, so Abel brought an acceptable sacrifice to God. And in Ephesians 5:2, in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, it says, "And walk in love, as Messiah also has loved us, and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma." So Yeshua's sacrifice was pleasing to God. Very nice. They look in 4:4 again. We saw Abel is sacrificing the firstborn of his flock, right? It's a perfect, unblemished lamb. And in John 1:29, it's the New Testament, it says, "The next day, Yochanan, John, saw Yeshua coming toward him and said, 'Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world.'" And it's repeated in 2 Corinthians 5:21. It says, "God made him who knew no sin to be sin on our behalf, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." So Yeshua became our unblemished lamb sacrifice. Very nice. In Genesis 4 and 5, it says, "And the Lord looked favorably on Abel and his offering, and he did not respect Cain and his offering." Okay, so we have Abel's offering received God's public acceptance. God accepted it. He was happy with his firstborn of his flock. In Luke 3:21 and 22, this is at Yeshua's baptism. When all the people were being baptized, Jesus was baptized too. And as he was praying, heaven was opened, and the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, descended on him in a bodily form like a Yonah, like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my beloved Son, in you I am well pleased." So Yeshua also received God's public acceptance. In Genesis 4:5, it says, God did not respect Cain in his offering, and Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So Abel ended up being betrayed out of envy. And in Matthew 27:18, it says, for he, Yeshua, knew that for envy they had delivered him. So Abel and Yeshua were both betrayed out of envy. Genesis 4:8, and Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass where they were in the field that Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. And in the New Testament, John 15:25, but this happened that the word might be fulfilled, which is written in their law, they hated me without a cause. So there is hatred toward both Abel and Yeshua by their own brothers. Another parallel, nice. And again, the same thing, Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. And in Matthew 26:65 and 66, then the high priest tears his garments, saying, he has blasphemed. Why do we need any more need of witnesses? Behold now, you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? And they answered, saying, he is deserving of death. So both Abel and Yeshua were killed by their brothers unjustly. Nice. Here's another one. We'll stick with Genesis 4:8 again. Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. And in Matthew 26:62, and the high priest, having stood up and said to him, answer you nothing? What do these witness against you? But Yeshua was silent. Neither Abel nor Yeshua defended themselves. Abel, I don't think he saw it coming. There's a rock on the back of his head. And Yeshua answered nothing. By the way, this Yeshua answering nothing, our whole court system in America is based on this, the Fifth Amendment. You have the right to remain silent. If someone's trying to charge you with something, they need to bring evidence, and they need to bring more than one piece of evidence. You just don't accuse somebody and it's a done deal. And that, not defending yourself, that was actually prophesied. If you go back to Isaiah 53, verse 7, this is foretelling about the Messiah, and it's about the Messiah. It's not written about Israel. But Isaiah 53:7 says, he, the Messiah, was oppressed and afflicted, and he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. Nice. Genesis 4:10, it says, the voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. And in Hebrews 12:24, it says, and to Yeshua Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkling of blood, speaking better things than that of Abel. Wow! I mean, it's talking here that this blood of Yeshua is speaking. We told you, blood cries out. So, the blood of Abel and the blood of Yeshua both spoke. And it talks about Jesus being the mediator of a new covenant. It should not be a surprise that there is a new covenant. Covenant is another word for testament. There should no surprise there's a New Testament, because Jeremiah 31:31 is telling Yeremahu 31:31 says, I'm going to send you a new covenant, not like the one that I gave you at Sinai, which you broke. I'm giving you a new covenant. So you should be looking, Jewish friends, for a New Testament. Well, I got one for you. Genesis 4:12, when you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth. Okay, so I see Abel's murderer being punished. And in Mark 12, starting in verse 7, he has this vineyard parable, but those vine dressers said amongst themselves, "Hey, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours." So they took him and killed him and cast him out of the vineyard. Therefore, what will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come and destroy the vine dressers and give the vineyard to others. So it's foretelling in parable form that those who are doing the killing will be punished, just like Cain was punished. Hebrews 11:4, it says, "By faith Abel offered a better sacrifice than Cain did." I had mentioned earlier that Abel was in the hall of faith. Okay? And in Revelation 1, starting in verse 4, it says, "John, to the 7 churches in the province of Asia, grace and peace to you from him who is and was and is to come, and from the 7 spirits before his throne, and from Yeshua HaMashiach, the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth." Okay, so Abel and Yeshua both had faith. Very nice. And by the way, notice John's greeting here, "Grace and peace to you." Grace always comes before peace. You cannot have peace unless you receive God's grace. Then peace comes. And they always have it that way. Grace and peace to you. Very nice. In 1 John 3:12, it says, "Do not be like Cain, who belonged to the evil one and murdered his brother. And why did Cain slay him? Because his own deeds were evil, while those of his brothers were righteous." Okay, so Abel was a righteous man. And in Luke 23:47, when Yeshua is hanging on the cross, the centurion saw what had happened. He gave glory to God, saying, "Surely this was a righteous man." Abel and Yeshua both were righteous. Again, Hebrews 11:4, Abel was commended as righteous. By faith, Abel was commended as righteous. And again, Revelation 1:4 and 5, verse 5, "And Yeshua HaMashiach, the faithful witness." So they were both faithful. Luke 11, verse 50, starting, "As a result, this generation will be charged with the blood of all the prophets that has been shed since the foundation of the world, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who was killed between the altar and the sanctuary. Yes, I tell you, all of it will be charged to this generation." So, it's saying here that Abel was a prophet. That's what it says, with the blood of all the prophets, from the blood of Abel. Again, I don't know what Abel prophesied, but the Bible refers to him as a prophet. And if you go to the New Testament here, Matthew 21:11, the crowds replied, "This is Yeshua, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." And again in John 4:19, the woman said to him, "Sir, I understand you are a prophet." She's talking to Yeshua here. So Abel and Yeshua were both prophets. All right. Of course, the ultimate prophet is Yeshua. And remember, how do we, there's a lot of parallels we just covered between Abel and Yeshua. And there are heaps of parallels between Isaac and Yeshua. There's parallels between Boaz and Yeshua. There are a lot of Yeshua types in the Bible. The ultimate is Moses, Moshe. Deuteronomy 18:18 says, I will raise up for them a prophet like you, Moses, from among their brothers. And I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I commanded him. Messiah will be a prophet like Moses. He will be Jewish, he's going to be from their brothers, and he's going to be a prophet. And if I've got 7 hours of video comparing Moses and Yeshua, there cannot be anybody else who is the Messiah. It has to be Yeshua. So, all right. So there's your bonus. Thanks for watching. God bless. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.